A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another graphic novel review, the last in the series of Preacher graphic novels that I have been reading and reviewing. I apologize for the noise in the background. That is just the washing machine. This is Preacher Book 9, Alamo. You can see on the cover there we have Jesse Custer, Tulip, and Cassidy. Okay, I'm going to give you a big cheers. Now, this brought back so many fucking memories for me. And at the end of this video, I will be doing somewhat of a retrospective on the entire series of Preacher, but this ties up all the loose ends, and the ending itself is incredibly satisfying, which is not something that you really get in comic books, although Garth, Ennis and Steve Dillon basically knew this was going to be a one-trick pony, a limited run, so to speak, of 66 issues, not including the special editions that were covered in Ancient History and Tall in the Saddle, which I reviewed at the end of the last Preacher video. If you have no idea what Preacher is, please go back and watch the first 8 videos in this series to catch you up on the story. But we see the culmination of everything. It all comes to a head. It is all really, really satisfying, as I said. You get a sense of closure on the characters. There is no more story to tell. There doesn't fucking have to be. Just the way a good comic book series should end. So with that said, we're just going to get into the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
Okay, here we are. Book 9, Alamo. This is the final volume in the Preacher series by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Let's get straight into it. Okay, we get a little bit of background on Jesse Custer, Tulip, and Cassidy. Star, Arseface, the Saint of Killers, and of course God. And then we get the backstory for anyone who hasn't caught up with the story itself, which by this point, you know, they really should have. So here we have the Alamo, and just a little bit of American history about what went down there. We have Custer kind of walking and wondering how he got to where he got. Then we cut to the Adelphi Angels from the very beginning. They have been banished to Earth. We actually saw all this, I believe, in book 1. And they're just enjoying themselves with sex and drugs. And there is a knock at the door, and it is Custer, who busts in because he wants information from them. We then cut to Star, who you might remember in the last book had his genitals ripped off by a Rottweiler and is now kind of having to pee through a spigot. He has toilet paper printed with all of the people that have pissed him off. And as he's wiping his ass, he's like, how do you like it now? How do you fucking like it? Just Star being Star, I guess. So, Custer has come to these angels to get information on the Saint of Killers, information on God, information on the fall, just kind of tying up all of these loose ends so that we know this is going to be like the final confrontation. Star is just going completely fucking berserk. He's going off at Featherstone and Hoover, all because someone put inverted commas around the titles in this report. It's really funny to kind of watch him absolutely lose his mind. This is the culmination of everything that has happened to him that we've seen over the course of the series, where he was raped, he had his leg, his ear blown off, he had his leg cut off and eaten by cannibals, and his head carved to look like a penis, and his genitals bitten off by a Rottweiler, which would probably cause anyone to kind of go nuts. Jesse digs up the remains of the Saint of Killers in order to draw him out. We then get Cassidy sitting in a church. The priest comes and Cassidy's like, I don't want to fucking talk to you. I want to talk to the big man. And then he kind of tries to get God's attention in order to make a deal. The Saint of Killers comes to talk to Preacher. Star is practicing with an overly large gun to compensate for the fact that he has no more genitals. And Hoover is trying to kind of console Featherstone that this guy is just being an asshole. Custer and the Saint of Killers talk. Custer has a plan that involves the Saint of Killers. The Saint of Killers doesn't want to hear it, but Custer ultimately lets him know what he learned from the angels, in as much as everything was kind of planned by God. God knew that by creating man and giving them free will, he would start a war between the angels, and that God wants people to love him unconditionally, but at the same time, the creation of the Saint of Killers was kind of the opposite, because this man was so full of rage and of hate and of evil. And he's trying to explain this to Jesse, and then he shows Jesse all of the spirits of the dead that the Saint of Killers killed in his lifetime that just follow him around everywhere he goes. And Jesse is like, we need to set you loose. You're pivotal to this plan. Star gets a call that Jesse is going to be in San Antonio, which is where the Alamo is. And he goes back to his kind of old self, mobilizing the troops and whatnot. Featherstone is happy that she sees the old Star back. The Saint of Killers learns about Genesis and how Genesis wasn't a mistake, that God actually knew that he could make an angel and a demon fall in love, thus creating Genesis, thus creating a power greater than himself, which would then love him, which is what he wanted all along. So the creation of Genesis, while we believed at the very beginning was a concoction, it was a mistake, it was actually a concoction by God to create this powerful being. So the Saint of Killers basically agrees to whatever Jesse's plan is going to be. Star calls the remainder of the Grail together, this kind of secret society, and he tells them that, listen, our mission is no longer Armageddon, and they're kind of skeptical about this, while Tulip basically fucks Jesse's brains out after he'd gone off on his hunt for the Sand of Killers. Star reveals to the Grail that we are no longer going to cause Armageddon. We are no longer going to create this Messiah, but we are now out for revenge. And he lists all of the transgressions that have happened to him and shows them his little spigot penis thing on the camera. And now the sole purpose of the Grail under his reign as Allfather is to kill Jesse Custer. When the members of the Grail don't go for that, he ends up killing them with chlorine gas, because the leader of the guard was actually trained by Star and so is loyal to him. Tulip starts to get a little bit suspicious about what is going on. The last time the sex with Jesse was this good was in France, just before he left her to take on the Grail in Masada, and she's worried that he's going to do it again, but he assures her that he's not. Hoover is driving through San Antonio and sees Jesse and Tulip and gets out of the car and basically confronts them with a gun. Jesse has no idea who this guy is, which probably pisses him off even further. Featherstone comes to Star and declares her love for him, and he basically mocks her over it, leading her to kind of be despondent. Hoover is about to shoot Jesse when Tulip draws her gun. Suddenly, Jesse knows exactly who he is, and after Hoover explains how Jesse had ruined his life and how the whole thing basically fucked him up, Jesse uses the word of God and tells him to just forget about it, which he does, and Jesse leaves him sleeping peacefully on a park bench. Okay, we come to Arseface driving across the country, comes to the town of Salvation, which you might remember was the town that Jesse was once the sheriff of back in book 7, volume 7, I believe. And he stops by Jody's bar. As he walks in, everyone starts throwing up, and the guy's like, Toby's like, sorry, man. He's like, no, it happens all the time. Hoover is over the moon. He's kind of forgotten, thanks to Jesse's word of God, every bad thing that happened to him. As Arseface is leaving the bar, he sees some rednecks going after Laurie, and he goes and he stops them, and Laurie kind of thanks him. Remember, she has the ocular condition where what she sees doesn't register as what it actually is, but she's still kind of a smart girl, and she takes Arseface back into Jody's bar. Jody and Cindy, who have come along because they saw Laurie being abused by the rednecks, they're just like, what the fuck? Okay, we'll just leave it. Hoover meets Star and Featherstone at the airport and carries Featherstone's bags, leaving Star to carry his own, because he is now a changed person. He is happier, he is better, he has forgotten all of the bad shit. In the bar, we see that Hector, the Mexican, from back when he got shot in the neck And the first time we saw him, the people were all making kind of fun of the fact that he was a Mexican. He's doing really well for himself and making jokes at his own expense and at the expense of his friends around him. We see now that Odin Quincannon's brother, Conan Quincannon, has decided to rectify the wrongs that his brother had done, and has opened up a kind of like a sewage treatment plant where that meatpacking plant was, thus giving the townsfolk back jobs and trying to kind of make Salvation a better place to atone for the sins of his brother. Arseface asks Jody what is wrong with Laurie, that she sees things, and Jody kind of explains it to him. Hoover is in the hotel room with Featherstone and ends up declaring his love for her, just like Featherstone declared her love for Star. But Featherstone is so preoccupied, she wasn't paying attention, doesn't hear him, and he's like, all right, fuck it, and he goes off drinking. Arseface is approached by Conan Quincannon and is offered a job shoveling shit in the sewage treatment plant, which he gratefully accepts, thus ending, sort of, the story of Arseface. So Arseface gets a job in a sewage treatment plant shoveling shit, which he's very happy about. He tells Laurie, can't understand why she is helping him out. She was the one that asked Conan Quincannon to give him a job. And then we see that because of her ocular problem, she doesn't see him as Arseface. She sees him as this guy, and they share a kiss. This officially ends the Arseface story on a happy note. He went from troubled teen to revenge biker to rock star to shit shoveler in a sewage treatment plant, where he has fallen in love with a one-eyed hillbilly girl who was going to marry her own brother before he was killed by a man who was having sex with a chicken. This is the brilliance of Garth Ennis's writing. That is the story arc. I just don't know. I just don't even have words to describe Arseface's story arc there, but that is literally what it is. So Jesse and Tulip discuss what is about to kind of take place, and he plans to kind of reveal what he's going to do to God and whatever the next day, but he doesn't actually end up falling asleep, because every time he does sleep, all he sees is this nightmare image of Tulip with the back of her head blown out, which is what happened in the second book with Jody killing her on orders from Jesse's grandmother. And he kind of can't get that out of his head. He wakes up suddenly and finds her in the bathroom stocking up with weapons. Hoover has played a prank on Star and has put kind of black shoe polish around the eyepieces of the binoculars, which Featherstone thinks is going to get him killed. He thinks is insanely funny. Again, Tulip and Jesse are having a heart-to-heart. He hands her a water bottle because she's really thirsty, but we then come to find out that he's drugged it. And he's done this because he doesn't want her to get hurt, which goes against everything that he promised her. So he's being a bit of an asshole here, but it's going to kind of come full circle a little bit. Star, still not realizing he has this shit on his eyes, goes to talk to the men that have been sent to help. He finds out that there is not many of them. There's about 12, which is not enough to take down Custer, he believes, but he sure as shit is going to try. The men see him with these black rings around his eyes, and they can't help but laugh, which drives him into an absolute fury. Jesse leaves Tulip asleep while he goes off to do what he has to do, and he is visited once more by John Wayne, the Duke. Featherstone approaches Star after he leaves the kind of meeting with these troops, and he ends up spitting in her face, which pisses off Hoover. This is the last time Jesse and the Duke are going to have their heart-to-heart. It's actually really quite poignant, and the Duke ends up telling Jesse that he is proud of him. Okay. Cassidy is in a bar talking to the bartender and anyone who wants to listen about the film Breaker Morant. For those of you that don't know Breaker Morant, and I'm just walking away from the camera to get a drink, so my voice might be a little softer, but Breaker Morant is a fantastic Australian movie about basically war criminals. If you can call them war criminals, they were actually just following orders. It's a whole big thing, but Cassidy is talking about the plot of Breaker Morant to whoever wants to hear it when Jesse kind of enters, sits down, and this is where they have their big kind of heart-to-heart talking about what Cassidy did, not only to Tulip, but in his earlier days. And Jesse kind of remains very stoic through this whole conversation, whereas Cassidy kind of starts to flip out a little bit. Tulip wakes up, realizes what Jesse has done. Jesse tells Cassidy that Sally passed away. Sally was the homeless woman that gave him the information in the last book. And this kind of goes on for a long time, this back and forth between Jesse and Cassidy. Featherstone and Hoover are sharing a drink. Hoover is a bit pissed off of the way that Featherstone was treated. Oh, that's nice. And Featherstone kind of mocks the fact that he can't say the word motherfucker. Still, he's still just a nice guy. You get a little bit of backstory between Featherstone and Hoover. Hoover was, before he joined the Grail, he was a lifeguard at a swimming pool. But he wasn't very good and someone died. Whereas Hoover taught Sunday school, and she came home to find her sister had been raped and butchered and the body dumped in the bathtub, and that is what led her to the Grail. So we get a little bit more about Hoover and Featherstone. I think it's really clever that these were not stories that Garth Ennis dived really deep into, because they're not really characters that are the crux of the main Preacher storyline, but giving them a little bit of context towards the end is a nice payoff for the readers that have followed this series all the way through. They're not really stories that needed to be told. We get that Hoover is a bit of a fuck up already. We got that from the first volume. The Featherstone story paints her in a little more of a sympathetic light, but not necessarily one that we had to go into detail with, which is something that I do appreciate, that it wasn't really explored, but we still got the payoff at the end, and the focus of the story kind of can remain on this kind of last part of it. Again, Jesse and Cassidy having their kind of showdown, so to speak, with words, and he basically tells Cassidy, be here at this time, be in front of the Alamo at this time, and we're just going to have it out. And Cassidy's like, are you fucking serious? You know what I am? And Jesse uses the word of God on him, saying, you better fight like hell. So pretty much this whole thing is going to come to a fucking head. It's going to come to a climax. At this point, it almost seems like Jesse has kind of stopped going after God, that his whole thing now is to sort this shit out with Cassidy. He doesn't give a shit about God at the moment. He doesn't give a shit about Star. It's just Cassidy. They get approached by some guys in the bar where they clink their glasses, because you know what's going to fucking happen. Tulip, pissed off, realizes Jesse is still in town and sends Skeeter the dog to go and find him. We see the remnants of the fight. Of course, the two of them win. Jesse tells him time and place. And then Cassidy, sitting down, ends the issue by culminating the story of Breaker Morant. I'm not going to get into it. It is a fantastic movie. It's a fantastic story. And if you haven't seen it, go and fucking watch it. One of Brian Brown's best fucking movies, in my personal opinion. Okay. Cassidy comes to the Alamo, where they are going to duke it out. And, of course, it just starts straight away while Star is watching from a nearby building. Tulip, looking for Jesse, sees some of the Grail men standing around there. She's armed to the teeth, so she is going to go and cause some shit. Jesse and Cassidy fight it out. Cassidy getting angrier and angrier while Jesse just kind of keeps his cool. He's beyond all of this shit. He knows exactly the sort of person that Cassidy is. Not only from what he did to Tulip, but from the stories he heard from Sally. So he ends up beating the shit out of Cassidy. Featherstone comes and confronts Star, realizing how much of a monster he actually is, as Star is watching Jesse and Cassidy fight. Featherstone draws a gun on him, but he turns around and shoots her, thus ending the story of Featherstone. Jesse and Cassidy continue to duke it out. Of course, Jesse getting the low blow to the nuts. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but in a fight, I don't care who you are, man to man, you don't kick another man in the jubblies. You don't punch another man in the jubblies. That's not cool, man. Not cool. So Tulip is basically taking her wrath out and just blowing shit up and killing all of these Grail fucking henchmen. This is why she was pissed off. Look at what she's fucking doing. She is taking them out, and Jesse didn't even trust her enough to have her cover his back. Like, he should have known better. That's on him. Cassidy is kind of basically giving Jesse shit for everything. Jesse's just taking it. And ultimately, Jesse just ends up beating the ever-loving shit out of him. Hoover comes, realizes what Star has done to Featherstone, and Star shoots him in the head as well. Jesse, basically, all he wants to know is why with Cassidy, and Cassidy kind of can't explain himself. Jesse's just like, you stabbed me in the back, I was your friend, I stood up to you. Cassidy is kind of blaming Jesse, like, I followed you on this fucking journey, on this road to hell. And Jesse's like, all you needed to do was to be a man. And Cassidy extends his hand, which Jesse shakes right before Cassidy fucking sucker punches him in the face. Tulip finds the bodies of Featherstone and Hoover. Cassidy, realizing that there is nothing that he can do at this point, basically decides, okay, you know what? You're right. I'm an asshole. I'm just going to wait for the sun to rise. This isn't what Jesse wants at all. Jesse's not that sort of a fucking person. But Cassidy lets himself get burned up. Just as Cassidy kind of dies, Star gives his sniper the order to shoot, and the sniper takes out Jesse, killing him and releasing Genesis as Tulip gets up to the roof and realizes what has happened. She gets into a gunfight, kills the sniper, shoots Star. Star fires back. She's wearing a bulletproof vest. They get into a tussle, and she ends up with Star out of bullets, and she blows his brains out, thus ending Star's story. She races down only to find Jesse dead with a bullet wound in the head. Thus ending the story of Jesse Custer and Preacher. Or does it? No, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. We get the letter that Jesse left for Tulip, along with a key to a safety deposit box. Jesse is alive and well, of course, and he's with Tulip at the safety deposit box. It has all the money that he has gathered and over the years of nefarious deeds and stealing and all that kind of shit. And Tulip basically cannot forgive him for leaving her. So this is it. She's done with him. And she walks away. Jesse finds a note from Cassidy that kind of explains what he did. He made a deal with God that if Jesse dies, Genesis gets set free, but bring Jesse back to life. If he dies, bring him back to life. It's a whole big thing. God goes back to heaven now that Genesis is gone. and he finds the deal. Basically, he doesn't find, but this is the deal that he made with Cassidy. Cassidy wants Custer kind of alive, and Cassidy also asks something of himself, which is to make him human again when he dies, and he will make sure that everything works out for God. So Jesse is sitting in the park and lamenting. He sees a cop, one of the horseback cops, mistreating the horse, and Texan cowboy that he is, that ain't cool. We already saw that in Tall in the Saddle. Tulip sees a letter that Cassidy left her, basically telling her that yes, Jesse did say something when he fell out of the aircraft, even though Cassidy had lied to her and said he didn't say anything. Jesse rides down and rides down the highway on the horse and confronts her and explains himself, but the kicker is he's crying, which is something that was drilled into the readers, that ever since his father died, he has not cried. No matter what happens, he hasn't cried, but the idea of losing Tulip makes him cry. And that kind of brings her around, which I thought was fucking perfect. An absolutely perfect way to get the two of them to reconcile. Just absolutely brilliant. God gets to his throne at heaven, surrounded by a bunch of dead seraphim angels and the Saint of Killers. And remember, the Saint of Killers has those guns that it doesn't matter what he shoots, it's going to die. God initially kind of begs, but then gets angry. And the Saint of Killers is like, fuck that, and shoots God, killing him. Jesse and Tulip ride off into the sunset in some beautiful, beautiful splash pages. Just fantastic. The Saint of Killers now sits on the throne of heaven, and Cassidy is a man again and no longer a vampire, and he goes off to enjoy his life. And that, along with some great cover pages and whatnot, is the culmination of what is undoubtedly my favorite comic book series of all time. And by comic book series, I do mean a series that has a beginning and an end. There is no more Preacher. Garth Ennis went on to do many, many other things. Books like Hellblazer. I don't know if that came before or after Preacher, but he did Hellblazer. He did Hitman. What was the other one? Punisher, Max. Books that I will read and review on the channel. Just an absolutely huge fan of Garth Ennis and a huge fan of Steve Dillon's art, although I know that's very divisive. My good artistic friend, Ian Van Gammett, who does phenomenal work, isn't a fan of Steve Dillon's art, which is perfectly fine because we've had this discussion on numerous occasions and he always explains why. So yep, we're going to leave it there, but stick around because this video isn't over yet. I want to do a quick retrospective on the entire series as a whole, so I will see you soon. Okay, so we have come to the end of our Preacher journey. Thank you if you have watched all of the videos in this series and followed the story through to its culmination. Cheers. That is a nice lemon highball, I might add. So, these graphic novels are very near and dear to my heart. As I've stated in previous videos, I followed the story of Preacher when it was announced in Wizard, one of the greatest comic book kind of magazines back in the day, one that I collected along with other magazines like Dragon magazine, which dealt with the tabletop role-playing and things like that. And to me, this is pure 90s, early 2000s nostalgia. I love the characters. I love the concept. I mean, it opens on such a high note, goes to some really, really dark places. We get some backstories. We get the New Orleans storyline. Odin, Quincannon, the reunion, and the culmination, along with, of course, the kind of specials along the way. Now, I understand that this story is not for everyone. You probably couldn't write a comic like this today under a mainstream publisher. This was Vertigo, which was kind of an offshoot of DC Comics, the more adult-oriented DC Comics, very much like the Marvel Max series back in the day. It's not going to be for everyone. Primarily because of the religious overtones, the sexual overtones, the drug use, the violence, all of that stuff. It's really not a story that a lot of people are going to kind of get behind, due primarily today just to the nature of things, to the fact that people bitch and moan and complain about every little fucking thing because they think the internet is there to give them a voice, and we all fucking give a shit about what they believe, what they like, what they don't like, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. While you may not like this as the end of this video and the end of this series, to everyone out there, I say, fuck that. If you like something, you like it. If you hate something, you hate it. Nothing gives anybody the right to tell you what you are allowed to watch, what you're allowed to read, what you should watch, what you should read. They can certainly offer an opinion, and their opinion is, of course, valid. That's perfectly fine. You like what you like, you hate what you hate. Don't fucking tell me what I am allowed to watch, what I'm allowed to read, what I'm allowed to listen to, what I'm allowed to talk about, because you are fucking offended by something in this. Yes, at the end of this fucking series, God is killed by the Saint of Killers. That's going to piss some people off. Fantastic. If it pisses you off, it pisses you off. That is fine. Doesn't piss me off because it's a fucking story. And I know what fiction is. And it's a story that Garth Ennis wanted to tell with Steve Dillon doing the art. And there you have it. That's it. Don't ever feel like the things that you enjoy are not valid because someone fucking told you, oh, that's stupid. That's shit. That sounds fucking dumb. I like things that my wife hates. It's just inevitable. I love horror movies. My wife doesn't like horror movies. So what do? She doesn't fucking watch them. I don't talk about them with her. It's really simple. I watch them. I enjoy them. I talk about them with my friends. All two of them that fucking talk to me. It's good. It's fine. If any of these comic books offended you, my advice would be stop watching the videos or just don't go and read them. Anything that you think you're going to find offensive, don't read it. Don't look at it. Don't watch it. Don't listen to it. Just fucking let it go. That was a huge issue with comics back in the 90s. I can remember Spawn issue 5 had the serial killer whose name completely escapes me right now. He was a child killer, Kincaid, I believe. And a parent found Spawn issue 5 under her son's bed in Australia and flipped the fuck out because there is a couple of panels where he is finger painting and Billy Kincaid is the name of the killer. He's finger painting and he has cut off the fingers of children and stuck them on a piece of paper with glue. And this parent is like, this shouldn't be in a comic book. I rushed out and grabbed Spawn issue 5, having not read the previous issues. I just saw that and went, wow, that sounds fucking cool. I'm going to read it. Yeah, it was all right. I mean, it was what it was. As adults, if you've got small children, yeah. I mean, by all means, you should keep them away from things that you don't want them to watch or you don't want them to read until they get to an age where they can make up their own mind. That's your responsibility as a parent. Don't go out there and fucking tell people what they should be doing, what they should be watching, what they should be reading. That is fucking weak. Now, I didn't want to end this video series on a down note, so I'm just going to say, those of you out there that enjoyed the run of Preacher, please go out and find it for yourself to read, because I skipped over a lot of the nuances of the dialogue and things like that, especially between Jesse and Cassidy, and there was just a lot that I just quickly glossed over in conversations. It is well worth going back and reading the genius that is Garth Ennis. I have actually purchased the omnibus of his Punisher Max run, which the Thomas Jane version of Punisher kind of took a lot of ideas from that kind of storyline, made it a little more realistic and a little less superhero-y, so to speak. I've purchased his run on Hellblazer, which I have personally never read, but am really looking forward to it. I'm trying to get my hands on some Hitman stuff. Hitman is a character that I've always loved the idea of, especially because Garth Ennis just manages to come up with these absolutely fucked up side characters. Case in point being the character of Dog Welder, whose superhero power is he actually welds dead dogs to people. I know. I need to fucking read this shit. Finally, to end all of this, I want to say a huge thank you to my Plaguelands Media partner in crime, Mr. Ian Van Gamet. When I first moved to South Korea back in, 2006, I want to say. He took a lot of my stuff. My tabletop RPGs, pretty much all of my videos and DVDs and whatnot. And part of that was my complete collection of Preacher graphic novels. And that magnificent bastard held them for me until, oh, fucking hell. He must have held them for a good 13, 14 years. And then I went back to Australia for a visit, and he gave them to me, and I brought them back to Korea. So all of this magnificence is because of my good friend, Mr. fucking Ian Van Gamet. So you know what? Hats off to you, my friend. That is a fucking solid, if ever there was one. He knew, like, he didn't have to keep them. I basically gave them to him and he could do whatever the fuck he wanted with them, which he did with a lot of my stuff. And you know, props to him. He did it for all the right reasons, which I'm perfectly okay with. It didn't bother me in the slightest. They were his to do with as he saw fit. But these, he knew how much I love these, and these he fucking held on to. So, you know what? Fuck it, let's have some more. Also, shout out to a Mr. Luke Carmen who really wanted to find out how Arseface's story ended. Now you know, sir. Happy ending all the way, and I'm sure in more ways than one if you get my meaning. So, cheers to you too, buddy. Oh boy. So that is going to end this graphic novel series. There will be more book reviews coming up, of course. It's what I enjoy doing. Last count, we are 15 subscribers away from the most offensive book I own being read and reviewed on the channel. So if you've got friends, send them our way. If you don't have friends, go out in the street and just fucking harass people and get them to join up. We've got stuff in the works, more shit coming. So, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Oh man, that ain't sitting right. Do all of that other good stuff, but most importantly, and I cannot say this enough, stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. But most importantly of all, please read a fucking book, people.